Well, let's move on now and get some reaction from Labour, shall we? Because on the show today, we also spoke to the Shadow Defence Secretary, John Healey. I did move on to the NATO summit, but I started by asking about the naming of Huw Edwards.
She's taken the decision to do that. These are serious allegations, and they've quite clearly taken a terrible toll on the alleged victims and their families, and also on Huw Edwards and his family. I hope the temperature can be taken out of this now, and that the level of speculation and attention can be reduced and allow the BBC to do what they need to do now, which is fully investigate the allegations and do that without any more delay. That's interesting. Do you think that part of the issue was that the BBC were slow off the mark, if you like? Well, up until today, it was in the hands of the police. So the BBC had to stay their investigation. Now they need to pick this up. They need to get to the bottom of the allegations. And in the meantime, I think we can all have a great deal of concern for those victims, alleged victims and their families, and also for Huw Edwards and his family too. What do you think is serious about the allegations? I think do you know, I really don't want to get into that, in the sense that it's a complicated story. There have been conflicting reports, and this now needs to be bottomed out. So the rest of us are, I think, best served by allowing the BBC to do that and waiting for the full facts actually to be established. Are there question marks about how the BBC's handled this? Obviously, the initial allegation from the mother, she said that she did go to the BBC, but nothing happened. Well, the reports have been conflicting, haven't they? As well as confusing to those not involved, and part of a very complicated story. So I'm sure the BBC will first and foremost want to sort out the investigation in these allegations, but will want to look at its processes to make sure that it's able to do these promptly and professionally in the future. Just looking at the statement that we've had about Huw Edwards from his wife, she says that Huw is suffering from serious mental health issues. The events of the last few days have greatly worsened matters. He suffered another serious episode, and he's now receiving inpatient hospital care, where he'll stay for the foreseeable future. Do you feel sorry for him? I think we've got to all do now what she's also asked for, which is privacy and respect, so that these matters can be properly settled, and that's the BBC's job. OK. Now, let's talk about NATO. Has it been a successful meeting, do you think? It's been a very successful summit, in my view. The first focus has properly been on Ukraine, and there's been a big boost to the military help available to Ukraine now, but also some important longer-term security agreements in place. And the bilateral agreements that, through the G7, Britain is going to be a part of, have our full Labour support. I think equally significant has been the reboot of defence planning that NATO has undertaken in order to deal with the Russian aggression we may face over the next decade. And above all, the unity of the NATO nations, so that NATO's come out stronger, it's come out more unified, and it's come out bigger, of course, with the accession of Sweden as well as Finland as new members. And those things are the very last things that President Putin would have wanted to see. They're always quite carefully choreographed, and we've had something that has blown some of that choreography out, and I'm talking about the comments by Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, who said that Ukrainians need to show gratitude towards countries providing them with weapons. He says, "I said to the Ukrainians last year, when I drove 11 hours to be given a list of weapons that they want, I said, I'm not Amazon." What do you make of that? For me, the most important thing is the Ukrainians are fighting for the freedom and future of their country. And President Zelensky wants more military help yesterday. Of course he does. And I think the last thing he needs is public lectures about gratitude, particularly as they also overshadow a successful NATO summit, which has left NATO stronger and has given Ukraine greater security, not just immediate military help, but some of the reassurances and agreements they'll need for the medium term. It's very measured how you talk about these things, but at the same time, like, you know, we're kind of, if you look at what's happened, President Zelensky, a guy who his country has been invaded by Russia, he has seen
playgrounds being blown up. We've all seen the pictures of apartment blocks demolished. He's been told he should be more grateful. Extraordinary thing to say,
It's important to be measured. He's a war leader, displaying great courage as the Ukrainians have in their fight, civilians and military alike. What he's also said, and this for me is the most important thing he said at the end of the summit, is that this is a significant security victory for Ukraine, for our people and for our children.
OK. Just finally, I just want to talk to you about public sector pay, because the peer review bodies are making recommendations. The armed forces, of course, are tied up in this. And we understand that the pay rise is around 6 to 6.5% for them. Would Labour grant it?
Well, the average value of all workers' pay has fallen over since 2010.
Armed forces. You're Shadow Defence Minister. You know, what would you do? Would you grant it?
We haven't seen the pay review bodies that the government's had for some time. That's a decision for the government now and a responsibility for the government now.
Would you be lobbying? You say you're the government. This is the army going to be listening to this kind of answer.
Sure.
Would you be in the ear of the Chancellor saying these guys need to be top of your list? They need 6%. We need to accept the pay review bodies. I'm just trying to get a sense of, you know, if you want to be Defence Secretary after the election, what kind of Defence Secretary are you going to be?
I'll be a Defence Secretary that restores the moral contract this nation makes with those who serve and their families. But at this stage, we haven't seen this year's pay review body. We don't know how the government's going to respond. They've still got the autumn statement and the spring statement next year. We don't know what inflation's going to be like. We don't know what the state of the economy is going to be like. What we do know, and if you had a Labour government, they would be taking the pay review body review reports seriously. They would be bringing round the table those who need to sort out the settlements for the future. And it isn't just about pay. It isn't just about pay in the forces, just like it isn't for the NHS or for teachers. They're worried about recruitment, retention, workforce load and high level of vacancies.
Thank you very much.
These are bigger problems. They're responsibility of the ministers.
Thank you very much.